Hi, everyone. Welcome to How to Pay for College, presented by Provident Credit Union and Sally May. Thank you for joining with us today. Our speaker today is Talasa Naylor from Sally May. She has over 40 years of experience in financial aid. She began her journey in college as a financial aid recipient with an offer of work study, leading her to a job in the financial aid office as a peer counselor at the University of Colorado in Boulder. After college, she worked for several years as a financial aid administrator at a few different colleges in California before joining the student loan industry. She has held roles such as student loan sales representative, vice president of customer services, vice president of sales, and is currently a business development manager for Sally May, where she has worked for the past 17 years. She has also been active in financial aid associations, taking on roles over the years, such as president for the California Lenders for Education and providing committee support for Western Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, WASFAA, and the California Association of Financial Aid Administrators, CASFAA. She has a passion for supporting training and education in financial aid and currently chairs the training committee for CASFAA. Talasa holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado, Boulder, and an MBA from California State University, Northridge. So here's some a bit housekeeping items. So all participants have been muted. Therefore, if you have any specific questions during the course of this presentation, please enter it in the Q&A section, and we will answer all questions at the end of the webinar. Also, as part of your attendance today, we'll be sending you a follow-up email after the presentation, which will contain a link to the recording. Now, with that, I'd like to hand it over to Talasa Naylor from Sally May, who will be giving the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Carol, for the introduction and the housekeeping. And as I was listening to you, I thought, boy, we've sure got a lot of acronyms. in financial aid, we have acronyms in banking. Every industry has so many acronyms. And you got to spell them out, and then it's kind of crazy. And as involved as I've been in so many different associations, every association also has their acronyms. And so it gets a little crazy sometimes, but I'm excited to be here tonight and present this session to you all on how to pay for college. You've all been placed on mute, but we are going to encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. So if you have a question, put it into the chat, and Carol is going to let me know. I'm going to try to remember at periodic times during the presentation to see if there's any questions in the chat. If not, we'll continue on, and then there is going to be some time at the end for us to do a little bit of Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, I may answer them as we go through the presentation, and if I don't, we'll get to them at the end. And I definitely encourage you to not be afraid to ask questions, because how to pay for college can be quite a confusing and complicated process, and there's lots of nuances. So as we go through also, I think Carol is going to try to post a couple of relevant links in the presentation in the chat, so you'll see her popping those in. And again, a recording of this will be available at the end, and we'll provide you with that location again as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off, and so that we can focus just on the presentation, and then I'll turn my camera back on so you can see my face again when we are ready to do some Q&A. So with that, let's get started. So let's begin with why you're all here in the first place. College is an expensive and time-consuming decision, but is it worth it? So Sally May does an annual study every year on how America pays for college, and our study indicates that 95% of parents believe that a college education is an investment in their child's future. So let's see if the data actually supports that. This graph, with information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, provides median weekly salaries for various degree levels, as well as unemployment rates based on educational attainment. So not surprisingly, you can see that there is a direct correlation between educational attainment and weekly salary. The higher the educational attainment, the higher the median weekly salary. You can see the weekly salary represented by the green shaded area. So for example, I calculated these out for you. You just see these weekly numbers, but I went ahead and calculated them out by 52 weeks to give you an annual salary, since that's how we normally talk about it. But the average annual salary of someone with just a high school diploma is about $30,000 a year. The average salary of someone with a bachelor's degree is about $65,000. And if a person goes on to get a professional or a doctoral degree, that average annual salary jumps to $97,000. So these are national averages. They're going to vary by location. They're going to vary by career. We also see the same benefits of a higher education with rates of unemployment. The unemployment rates are in the blue boxes within the table. So you can see these are 2020 unemployment rates. It was a little crazy year, but the unemployment rates for those with a bachelor's degree is 2.2% versus 3.3% with only a high school diploma. And if you go on to get an advanced degree, you can see that unemployment rates drop to less than 2%. So based on this data, I think we can all agree that a college education is a worthwhile investment of both your time and your money. So tonight we're going to cover some basics about what college is going to cost and ways for you to help plan to pay for that college. So this is going to include selecting a school and determining cost, calculating financial need with a FAFSA, understanding a financial aid offer, finding and applying for scholarships and grants, exploring federal student loan options, how to fund the remaining gap, and then a few additional tips. So one of the first things prospective college students need to do is research and select the right school and determine how much that's going to cost. Choosing a school is really important, and choosing a school that you're likely to attend for the entirety of your degree or carefully crafting a transfer strategy can save you money. If you're considering a community college in your path to earn a bachelor's degree, work closely with your transfer advisor to make sure you're taking the right courses. Doing this can help you avoid the added expense of having to spend more years in college due to lost transfer credits, wrong coursework, or repeated classes. I remember when my son was going to college, I went to an opening session that was provided by the president. And he said, you know, our goal is to try to get you out of school in 4 years for a 4-year degree, because every year that you go to school beyond how long it's prescribed to take that coursework costs you twice. And the way he explained that it costs you twice is that you're paying for yet another year of school, and you have a year of lost earnings that you could have had if you were out in the workforce. So that's something to think about as you begin planning for college, is to do everything you can to try to get that college education achieved within the appropriate timeline, because it's definitely going to cost you more money than just a single year if you have to keep going longer than what is prescribed. So consider all the costs, both those that go to your school and those around supporting your life during college. Consider potential income and the amount of debt you decide to take on to see if it's manageable. Research majors and degrees offered and admissions requirements. Don't forget to dive in a little bit deeper and look at retention and graduation rates and placement rates. These are all found on schools' websites, so you can check to see how well those schools perform and how well they get their students placed in programs and graduating. And first and foremost, make sure that education being offered and the size and location and feel of the school fits you. That's one way to ensure that you will stay at the institution you choose for the entirety of your degree. Don't choose a school just because of its reputation and price tag. However, cost can be a big factor, and it can ultimately be the deciding factor once financial aid offers are received. So also consider the experience you're going to have, the size and location, facilities, campus life and activities, and any other facets of the school that may be important to you. Schools can be widely different in student experience, and scheduling an in-person visit to your campus is highly recommended. But you can also do virtual visits. There's other ways to get a feel for a campus, but an in-person visit is really your best way. So now to get to the cost of college. There are two different costs that make up what a college really costs. The first is direct costs, and those are the things that are billed to you and paid directly to the school. This would include things like tuition, fees, campus housing, meal plans, but you can't forget about the indirect costs. These are costs that will not appear on the bill, but they are real expenses and need to be considered. So this includes books and supplies, equipment, transportation, and parking costs, and personal expenses. They can also include room and board for students not living on campus. So together, your indirect and direct costs combined are what we refer to as the cost of attendance. And in the next slide, I'll show you some average cost of attendance figures. So here's some information compiled annually by the College Board in the Trends in College Pricing Survey to show some national average annual cost of attendance for 2020. So for example, a community college is going to run you about $18,500. A public four-year university for in-state students is about $27,000. A public four-year institution for out-of-state students is about $43,000. And then if you go to a private institution, it can run you around $54,800, almost $55,000. And again, keep in mind that these are national averages, and you may find some variations between institutions and states, and especially for private universities. There are some of your more elite private universities, their tuition is approaching $70,000, $75,000 for some of those top schools. So it's pretty pricey. I mean, they're not tuition, they're cost of attendance. So it's important to also remember that this is for each year. So you need to multiply this by the number of years you're going to be in college to get your overall cost. So this might help drive home the importance of getting through your education in the allocated time frame, as extra years in college can result in increasing your total cost of college by quite a bit. So where you would find, all schools are required to provide the cost of attendance as part of their financial aid consumer information. So you can find this information in the financial aid section of the school's website. You can do a search on the website for cost of attendance, and it will also bring you to that correct link. So one other thing I want to talk about here when it comes to college cost is there's another piece of information on the websites that most schools provide, and that's something called net price. So net price is what you'll ultimately pay after any free money, such as scholarships or grants, have been factored in. So colleges are required to provide a net price calculator on their website. You can also visit collegecost.ed.gov. There's a link you can put in the chat, Carol, collegecost.ed.gov, to estimate your net price across institutions in one place. So the net price is therefore what you can expect to pay from your own savings, income, or borrowing. So this would be after any free money. And I have this one last slide, and then I'll see if there were any questions. So to help us understand what families are really paying for college, Sallie Mae and Ipsos engage in an annual research study called How America Pays for College. So this chart breaks down a composite of funding sources families report to use, that they use to pay for college in the 2021 academic year. So this was last year. So in general, there are 9 sources of funds that families can rely on: parent income, parent savings, student income, student savings, parent borrowing, student borrowing, and money from relatives and friends, and then scholarships and grants. So the chart on the slide, the circular chart, answers the question of how a typical family pays for college, showing the percent of total reported cost that was covered by each of these sources. Now, keep in mind, not every family had every one of these funding sources in their way they paid for college, but this analysis is useful because it gives you just a general idea of sort of the different categories and sort of the percentages. So one thing is clear when you look at this chart is that families use a combination of funding sources, but the largest source is from family contributions from savings and income. So when you put together the two, all the blue sections, you get more than 53% of your costs being covered from savings and income. Scholarships and grants are green, covered 1/4, and borrowed money covered 20%, and the remaining 2% came from family and friends. So that just gives you a general idea of a composite of how US families were paying for college. So now I'm going to take a quick stop and see if there are any questions that came up. Any questions, Carol?
No, not
Okay.
yet.
Not yet. We haven't gotten to the complicated stuff yet. All right. So many families are going to need to apply for financial aid to fill in the difference between what they think they can afford to pay and what the college is going to cost. So let's talk a little bit about financial aid. The primary application used to apply for federal, state, and institutional financial aid is the free application for federal student aid, or oftentimes you will hear it referred to as the FAFSA. The FAFSA is available for completion on October 1st of each year prior to the upcoming academic year. So for those of you who are going to be entering college next year, which would be 22-23, so if you're a senior this year, you're looking at college next year, you can begin to fill the FAFSA out on October 1st. So that's coming up Friday. You can begin to fill the FAFSA out on Friday of your senior year, and the information will be from you and your parents' 2020 federal tax return. That's the data that will be used. You can complete your application. I've got this bolded here a little bit bigger at FAFSA.gov. So that's a very important link for you to remember, is FAFSA.gov. So many schools and states also offer financial aid programs that are limited. They're offered only to those who apply first or meet certain deadlines. So make sure you apply for financial aid by the required deadline for your state and institutional funding. If you miss the deadline, you can actually continue to apply for financial aid all the way through the year. So if you're starting now, let's say you don't think you need financial aid and you start college next fall and think, oh my goodness, everything's changed in my life and I need to apply for financial aid, you actually have almost 2 years to fill out a FAFSA for that year. So you can start in October, but you can fill that FAFSA out all year. You can fill it out all during that 22-23 year as well and get financial aid at any point in time in which you need it. So that's one of the nice things. Some of those limited funds may have run out by that time, but there's always going to be some funding that's available for you. But if you want to get the best shot at the best aid, you need to make sure you meet those deadlines. So here's a list of information you should have at hand when you're filling out your FAFSA. Things like your social security number, your federal tax return, W-2s, records of other income, your bank statements, untaxed income records. Make sure you have your email address, your driver's license. You need to get an FSA ID. You get that at studentaid.gov. Sorry, that link isn't in here. Carol could maybe type that in, just studentaid, studentaid.gov. And you could get your FSA ID there. Thank you, Carol. And then a list of colleges that you want to receive the information. So make sure you have these. You can also, there's a data retrieval tool with the IRS. You can link to that. Sometimes that can pull your tax return information in for you if it's working properly, and that saves you the time of having to fill that out. So that's a nice feature. So these are just some things to have available when you're filling the FAFSA out. So what happens after you complete the FAFSA? Within a few days of filing your FAFSA, you're going to receive something called a student aid report. The student aid report, and all the schools you listed on the FAFSA are also going to receive a copy of your student aid report. And the student aid report is a summary of information you provided along with a calculated number called the expected family contribution. So this is a time when you can check for errors, make corrections, add any additional schools you want to receive your FAFSA. The student aid report is not going to tell you how much financial aid you'll receive. However, it will provide that estimated family contribution. This number is what colleges will use to determine your eligibility for need-based financial aid. It's not really, even though it's called an estimated family contribution, it's really a number that sort of ranks you financially with all other applicants that are applying for financial aid so that they can have a fair way to distribute need-based aid. So it's sort of a contribution, but sort of not. It's really more of a ranking number. So once you've been accepted to a school, they'll act on your FAFSA. So you can file the FAFSA even before you've applied to the school, even before you've been accepted. Make sure you file that FAFSA. Once you've been accepted, they'll act on your FAFSA and provide you with a financial aid offer based on your eligibility and available funds. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. If you do use the IRS data retrieval tool, you're not going to see the details of your income and tax information on the student aid report because you won't be able to correct it because it actually came from your tax return. So I talked about cost of attendance, and then I talked about expected family contribution. And so this is how they work together to determine your eligibility for financial aid. So the expected family contribution, should say family, it says financial here. The expected family contribution is a measure of your family's financial strength, calculated based on a formula established by law. It's basically a figure that helps agencies and the school determine your need for financial aid relative to all other students who are applying. And while it's used to determine financial need, EFC is not the amount of money your family will have to pay for college, nor is it the amount of federal aid you'll receive. Again, just a way to determine what funds the school can offer. So the college will subtract your expected family contribution from the cost of attendance to calculate how much need-based federal aid, such as grants, loans, and work study, that a student is eligible to receive. It will not vary by college, but the amount of aid your family, that the student is able to receive will vary by college. Next slide, I'll provide an example of that. So I wanted to talk, before I move to that next slide, about family circumstances changing. Sometimes a family circumstance may change from the tax year in which the FAFSA information is based. You're still required to use the required tax year to fill out the FAFSA, but if you encounter a financial crisis that's not reflected on the FAFSA, contact the financial aid office at each school you're considering after you file the FAFSA and after you've been accepted to the institution. These changes might include a loss of job, separation or divorce, death of a parent or a spouse, extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses. Anything that has significantly impacted the family's financial situation is a special condition that can be considered by the financial aid office. So each school will handle these a little bit differently. And while they're not required to make adjustments, many schools definitely will take them into consideration and make some adjustments. I have one more slide and then I'll take some questions because I know this is something where a lot of people have questions. So here's some examples determining financial need using 3 different schools. So remember, your expected family contribution stays the same regardless of school. The major difference in these 3 examples is the cost of attendance at each institution. So school A costs $60,000. You have your $20,000, we're going to assume a $20,000 expected family contribution. That's going to leave you with a financial need for this institution, school A, of $40,000. We'll say school A is a private school. School B, let's say this is the University of California. Cost is $30,000. You subtract your $20,000 family contribution, same as with school A, only now you have a need of $10,000. So this school would then be able to offer you up to $10,000 in need-based financial aid. So school C could be a community college, only costs $15,000 per year. Your expected family contribution is $20,000. See the same number across the board. You would end up with 0 eligibility for need-based financial aid. So that's how your expected family contribution works for different schools. That's maybe why you will see different types of financial aid offers that you may see sometimes just purely depending on the cost of school. So I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to dive into what you might see on a financial aid offer, but I wanted to see if anybody has questions right now on the FAFSA, EFC, the student aid report, cost of attendance, that sort of thing. So Carol, do we have any questions that popped up?
Yep, we have a few.
Okay, thanks.
If someone expects the financial need is 0, do you think it makes sense to still fill FAFSA?
Absolutely, it makes sense because you just never know. And some schools also, even if you're going to be looking at some of those not I'll be talking about non-need-based loans. They still want you to file a FAFSA to make sure that you aren't missing out on any potential eligible type funds that you might have. So all students are encouraged to fill out a FAFSA. I know there are some families who you're in an income bracket where there's you're absolutely sure you've got the money to pay for college and you're just going to look at scholarships. You don't necessarily need to fill out a FAFSA, but I would encourage everybody. Sometimes you might be surprised. You might have financial need at some institution, or it might make you eligible for some type of a scholarship. So hopefully that answers that question.
Next question. Since COVID, many families' incomes have changed. So if the family income has changed since the 2 years back used by FAFSA, once at the college, you can ask for an adjustment of the EFC?
Yes. So I think I touched on that a little bit. Absolutely. 2 years is a long time and a lot of things can happen. So the financial aid formulas are based on the assumptions that families' financial situations stay relatively the same year over year. And in most cases, that's true. This last year was pretty unprecedented though with COVID, and a lot of people either lost their jobs, had furloughs, or got sick and couldn't work. I mean, so many things happened this last year. So there will be a lot of people who are going to be filing their FAFSA based on 2020 taxes, and things have changed a lot. So again, don't be afraid. Fill the FAFSA out, use your 2020 data, and then let your school know what your change of circumstances are, and they will ask for any kind of clarification or specific documentation that they need. And in most cases, they will take that into consideration.
Okay, I have 5 more questions.
Okay, I might have to put some of these off to the end, but let's see how quickly we can get through these.
Okay. As a side note, if you have questions, if you can put it in the Q&A tool instead of chat, that will help us better go through these. So the next question is, my son is in his first year at college and he is using federal loans. Are most federal student loans interest deferred while they are in school?
I am actually going to talk about that in a later slide. So I will answer that. Hopefully I'll get to that one and answer your question coming up.
Okay. FAFSA will tell the expected family contributions in the dollar number? No,
it's a number. They call it expected family contribution. It is a number, and it's simply a number that is used. Schools sort of use it like a dollar number, but it's really not. It's really a way to financially rank you compared to everybody else that's filling the FAFSA out so that they can most fairly distribute limited need-based financial aid. So they use it sort of as a number to subtract from the cost of attendance, but it's really just a number to help them distribute need-based aid fairly. I'll talk about some additional ways you have to fill gaps a little bit later on. So hopefully that explains it.
Okay. I'm not sure if this was a comment or a question, but many scholarships require that FAFSA is filed.
Yes, that's why I was also saying everybody should do it, because sometimes you can, sometimes a scholarship is required. Scholarship will require the FAFSA sometimes. So not all of them, but some of them might. So I would just encourage everybody to fill the FAFSA out. I think some states are already requiring it. I'm not sure if California requires it yet. I think there's a bill. If they don't require it, I think there is a bill out there to have it be a requirement for high school graduation to fill out the FAFSA. But I would definitely strongly encourage it for everybody.
Do we have time for a few more questions, or should we wait till?
Let's move on because we're at 6:30 and I'm not quite halfway through my slides. So some of the slides will go a lot faster, but let's move forward. Just keep a note of what questions are still there, and I will be happy to get to them all at the end. All right, so now we're going to move into understanding a financial aid offer. And now I'm going to also dive into a lot of those questions you might have about loans and scholarships, that sort of thing. So once the school receives your FAFSA and you have been accepted by the school, They will determine your financial need at the school and send you a financial aid offer. Please note that some schools may also require some additional information or forms, so be sure to pay attention to all the information you receive from your selected schools so that you don't leave out a document that might be needed for them to be able to provide you with a financial aid offer. So what is a financial aid offer? There's no standard format. They typically contain the same information, how much school will cost in 1 year, the financial aid the school is offering, any remaining balance, gap, out of pocket that will be needed. When you get if you're applying to several different schools, you're going to want to compare your offers side by side and sort of see what you're going to end up having to borrow, what you're going to have to pay out of pocket. And this can be something that'll help you decide which college you want to go to. On the next slide, this is an example of a financial aid offer. They're going to look very different from different schools, but this sort of just shows you some components that you might see in a typical financial aid offer. It will outline the cost of attendance. So most of these are required. So they're going to have these in your financial aid office somehow, some way. They just may not be laid out exactly like this. So they'll outline the cost of attendance. They'll break it out for you by the tuition and fees and the different things that are in there. They're also going to include the different types of financial aid being offered from federal, state, and school sources, or any known private sources that they already know about, such as some scholarships maybe that you're already offering. They will include free money, such as scholarships and grants. It may include employment options, work study, and then even borrowing options. All of these are considered sources of financial aid. They'll usually break it out by semester and quarter and a full year. And if there's a gap, you'll see that at the bottom. So the timing of when you receive a financial aid offer is also going to differ by school. Some are going to provide the information as early as November. Others are going to hold the offers until February or March, but they should all come in within about a 4-month time frame. And also they will come in time for you to make that decision. So check with your school, make sure you understand the timelines. Most are going to be delivered to you electronically through a school portal that you have to log into, but you may get from some schools a paper letter. So they will include what you may also find that the school doesn't award you full funds. You'll see in this example here, you have an estimated remaining balance. And usually if they do leave a balance, you will see that they provide you with a list of resources that you can look at to cover the remaining balance, like you see down here at the bottom of this award letter page. So the first type of financial aid I'm going to talk about is student employment, usually in the form of something we call work study or institutional work study or campus employment. So these are jobs which can be on or off campus. They're dollars earned for dollars worked. So this type of financial aid will not reduce your bill because it's a paycheck paid to the students. The funds can help cover indirect costs and everyday expenses. So you have federal work study, which is based on financial need and money is paid to you from federal sources that the school has. Institutional employment options vary by college, but as does the funding available, but essentially it works the same way. Bottom line, a student will work for hours regardless of financial need. So typically you have opportunities to work across campus in a variety of different positions on or off campus. And if it's off campus, it's usually with a nonprofit organization. And by the way, this is how I got started working in financial aid. I was offered a work study student as part of my financial aid package when I was a freshman. I went into the financial aid office to ask what it was. They offered me a job, and I've been working in financial aid ever since. So you just never know, a work study job can turn into a career for you. But if not, even if it doesn't, it gives you a great opportunity to have some work experience, usually on campus. So the next category of financial aid is everybody's favorite, and that's free money. Grants and scholarships are both forms of free money that you don't have to work for and you don't have to pay back. So what's the difference? Grants are free money, doesn't have to be paid back, but grants are usually awarded based on having financial need as determined by the FAFSA. So there's many sources of grants, including federal grants, state grants, and institutional grants. You can see a couple of common federal grant programs listed on the right side of this slide. So that is typically what a grant is. The next category of free money is scholarships. Scholarships play an important role in paying for college, with 55% of families reporting that a student used a scholarship in 2021. So that's half of all students that went to college last year got some kind of scholarship. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So according to Sallie Mae's research on how America pays for college, among families who said they used scholarships, 63% received them directly from the college, with an average amount of $9,797. 28% received them from state or local government with an average amount of $3,145, and 29% of scholarship funds came from community or outside organizations with an average amount of about $2,000. So you can see they're coming from a lot of different areas. The cool thing about scholarships is that this is a type of financial aid that you can actively work to find. The great thing about a scholarship also is that you don't have to be #1 in your class or an all-star athlete to get free money for college. Scholarships can be awarded for many different reasons. They can be based on financial need, they can be merit-based, grades, class rank, or they can be based on hobbies, field of study, ethnicity, religion, first-generation college student, just all kinds of things. There are scholarships out there for so many different things. So even if you're just an average student, you've probably got something special about you somewhere that might actually help you to find a scholarship. So where can you find scholarships? There's many different resources for scholarships. There's local, there's employers, private companies, nonprofit organizations, community and religious groups. You can ask your family or friends if their employer or any organizations they're involved with offer scholarship programs. And if you're employed, ask your employer if they have a scholarship program. And if you're a current high school student, a great resource for some of the local or community-based scholarships would be your college and career counselor. So most high school counseling centers publish a list of scholarships or provide resources to students who are graduating and planning to go to college. The other really good place to look, and I've seen some really great websites out on some college websites, check with the admissions and financial aid offices. The resources can vary by school. Some are really robust, some are not, but you can usually find a lot of information on the financial aid page of your your college's website. They might have a scholarship office section. You can search for scholarships, or even a departmental scholarship for your major. So don't be afraid to go check the website out for the colleges that you want to attend, and just start searching for scholarships, because they'll usually have resources there. And there's just so many resources for scholarships. You can turn to local communities, federal and state agencies, libraries, and online search engines. So it can be pretty overwhelming to look for scholarships. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefit of a scholarship search engine. So a scholarship search engine is another way to search. Don't neglect talking to your college and career counselor. Don't neglect going to your college's website, but this is yet another thing you can add to your arsenal. A scholarship search engine will aggregate a list of scholarships and allow users to be matched to scholarships based on a personal profile. Once you create that profile, you'll receive a list of potential scholarships that match your criteria. And as new scholarships are added to the database, you'll be notified. So one of the bigger scholarship search engines available to you is listed right here, and you can find it on the Provident Credit Union website. This is a search engine powered by Sallie Mae, and the Provident Credit Union Scholarship Search Engine has 3.5 million scholarships worth of with about $18 billion available to award. And the link is right here. Carol will put that into the chat. This isn't the only search engine though. So you can sign up for more than one search engine. You've got this one, but you can check with your high school counselor or the college financial aid office to see about some other free search engines. And you should try several of them and see what you get. So when you build a profile, make sure you fill out the profile as completely as you can. The more information you can provide about yourself, the better you can get matched up with scholarships. I want to just do a quick reminder that your scholarship applications should never cost any fee to apply. They should be free. Scholarships should be free. If they're asking you for money to apply, then move to the next one. So the nice thing about scholarship search engines too is it's not just for one-time use. You can use these search engines before you start school and keep them up to date all during your education to receive alerts about new scholarships that you might want to consider. All right, student loans. Although everyone wants their education to be covered with free money, many students will still need to use student loans to help cover the costs. So student loans are a form of financial aid that needs to be repaid. So this is the first type of financial aid that I'm talking about that has to be repaid, usually with interest once you complete your education. So let's talk first about federal student loans. Federal student loans come from the federal government and provide a low interest option for students enrolled at least half-time. These programs allow a deferment of payments. In other words, no payments are required while the student is enrolled at least half-time in school. Full payment will begin 6 months after the student leaves school or drops below half-time. There's two types of federal direct student loans. The first is called a subsidized direct loan, and it's available only to students with demonstrated financial need from the FAFSA. On the subsidized loan, no interest is charged while the student's in school at least half-time and during grace. So essentially, the interest is being paid by the government while you're in school. The other type of loan is an unsubsidized loan. This is available to undergraduate and graduate students, and there is no requirement to show financial need. So this can help answer that question that came up earlier about even if I don't have need, should I fill the FAFSA out? If you want to take out an unsubsidized direct student loan, which doesn't require need, you will still need to fill out the FAFSA in order to get that. And then you can let the financial aid office know you're interested in that unsubsidized loan and you can qualify for it. So the key difference with this unsubsidized loan is that the borrower is responsible for the interest. This means interest is being charged beginning when the funds are released to the school. This is how most loans are built. Think about auto loans, mortgages. The interest is the responsibility of the borrower. And in this case, that borrower is the student. So it doesn't mean that you have to make payments. You still don't have to make payments, but just keep in mind that the interest is going to accrue while you're in school. So be a little bit careful with this. The interest is going to capitalize once you leave school. It's going to be added to the principal at the end of the 6-month grace period. If you want to pay that interest off prior to when it capitalizes, you'll avoid capitalization, and that will save you a little bit of money. But if you don't pay it off by the time the payments begin, then it gets capitalized and becomes part of the principal loan going forward. So that's the difference. So anyone can get an unsubsidized loan, whether you have financial eligibility or not. The subsidized loans are only for those who have financial need. And the difference is the interest is accruing on the unsubsidized loans. So here's a little bit more information about these federal direct unsubsidized loans. This is usually the first line of defense for students who need to borrow, is to get one of these type of loans or a combination. They are also available to graduate students, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm focusing just on undergraduates. You can see that a first-year undergraduate student can borrow up to $5,500 for that first year of study. The amount increases for each year. There's a maximum aggregate amount of $31,000 for all direct student loans, and of that, $23,000 can be subsidized. So the interest rates for these loans are fixed each July 1st for the life of the loan. The current rate for the 21-22 year is set at 3.73%. So you can see it's a pretty low interest rate, especially considering that there's no collateral to go with it except your brain, which they won't take away. Also, borrowers are charged an origination fee. It's determined October 1st of each year. Currently, that fee is 1.057 through the end of September 2022. This fee is subtracted from the loan prior to it being released to the school. The student is responsible to pay back the entire loan amount borrowed, which includes the origination fee. So flexible repayment terms of 10 to 25 years. There's various types of plans for loan forgiveness. A word of caution on loan forgiveness programs, if you've been paying any attention to things in the news about it, while they say they're widely touted, you'll hear all kinds of people say, oh, you can get federal loan forgiveness. Make sure you borrow with the intent. They're difficult to qualify for. So just make sure you borrow with the intention of fully repaying. And if you happen to get into a field that qualifies for loan forgiveness, it's going to be a very nice gift for you. So in that 6 months, no payments are required. It's 6 months after you leave school or drop to less than half time. And remember, again, that unsubsidized loan interest is accruing and is capitalized at the end of grace, but you can pay that interest anytime prior to grace period and avoid capitalization. So now that we've looked at all the grants, and so I'm not going to take another break right now for questions because I want to make sure I get through the presentation and then I can wrap up with any questions at the end. But now that we've looked at all the grant scholarships, work programs, and student loans, often there's still going to be a gap that federal student loans, there's going to be a gap that still needs to be funded. Some schools are automatically going to suggest filling that gap with a federal plus loan, but you don't have to go that direction or even borrow the recommended amount on the offer letter. So let's talk about ways to think about that balance and the additional ways you can fill in that gap. So the first thing you obviously want to do is see how you might be able to fill in some of that gap by managing your own budget differently. Are there expenses that are going to go down or be eliminated when a student goes to school or college? For example, if you're paying private school tuition, travel and activities, a decrease in grocery bills or utilities, these are ways you can weasel away a little bit more money. You may be surprised at finding ways you can cut costs or find extra money to help cover costs before going to borrowing. Some schools offer a tuition payment plan, and this is a great way for you to take that tuition bill or that direct cost bill, which could be tuition and housing, and spread it out over usually about a 10 to 11 month period is how tuition payment plans are. So you might get a bill and it's like, oh, you owe $20,000, and you're like, I don't have $20,000, just, you know, but if you spread it out over 10 months, and it's $2,000 a month for 10 months, that's a lot more manageable. So that's what a tuition payment plan does. Not all schools offer them, but you can fund all of your balance or part of it with a payment plan, look for other resources for the rest. So just consider what's affordable for you each month, spread it out over that 9 or 10 month period. Any dollar routed through a payment plan is a dollar that reduces your need to borrow. Sometimes they do have a little bit of fees going along with them. Usually the fees are still far less than interest you'd pay on a loan. So definitely take a look at tuition payment plans. Particularly, these are available at private institutions. Now we move into the Federal Direct Parent Plus loan. This is a loan program that can fill the gap. It's for parents of dependent undergraduate students. You can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any other financial aid received. So this can be used to cover that expected family contribution as well as gap. A FAFSA is required, and the loan will be in the parent's name for life. Need is not required. So any parent can get this loan, even if you don't have financial need. So keep that in mind, but you still will have to fill the FAFSA out. There is no release of a parent's obligation from a payment. Plus loans are repaid over a 10-year period of time. Deferment of payments while the student is in school is an option, but much like the federal student loan, the interest rate of the plus is fixed July 1st of the life, fixed for the life of the loan. This year, that interest rate on this year's loans is 6.28%, so not quite as generous as for the student loans. And the origination fee is 4.228%. I'm going to show you an example of how that impacts your disbursement in a couple slides later. To qualify for a plus loan, credit history is considered, and you must meet additional requirements if you have adverse credit history, but it's a pretty soft credit history, so most families are able to qualify unless you have major credit derogatories. So remember, like for the federal direct student loan, the fee of 4.228 is going to be taken from the proceeds. You will need to calculate the impact of that and add it to the amount you request. And I'll show you that slide in a minute. So another source of education funding is a responsible private student loan or private parent loan. A private loan is a consumer loan that's provided by a bank, credit union, or other financial institution, and approval and pricing are dependent on the credit of the applicant or the cosigner. So a private student loan is where the student is the borrower. Most dependent undergraduates will require a cosigner, and that cosigner is often the parent, but it can be any credit qualified individual who wants to help the student with their education. A private parent loan is similar to a federal parent plus loan in that the student is not the borrower. The difference with the private parent loan versus the parent plus loan is that the borrower can be the parent. The borrower can be the parent, but it can also be anyone else who wants to borrow. It can be a grandparent, aunt, or uncle. A FAFSA is not required to obtain funding in a private loan, but some schools may still require the FAFSA because they want to make sure that you weed out any opportunities for need-based funds first. Repayments vary by lender. They usually are 5 to 20 years. There's fixed rates and variable rates. You can see the rate ranges vary widely. Usually on the low end, rates are better than credit cards. On the low end, they can be better than a federal loan. On the high end, they're usually better than the credit than a credit card. Many lenders will offer a cosigner release option. So this is kind of a nice thing for parents. If you want to have your student borrow the private loan, you can be the cosigner on it. Once they're out of school and they're making payments on their own, they can request to have the cosigner released, which would be you as the parent. And then you're off the hook as long as they meet credit criteria. So check with your private lenders to see sort of what their policy is before you borrow. So shop, do your homework, evaluate options, choose what's right for you. This table is a side-by-side comparison of the main types of additional loans. I'm not going to go through this in extreme detail, but basically just to reiterate, we have the parent direct plus loan for parents. This is the parent borrowing for the student. Parent is the person that repays. You can't transfer this to your student to repay. It's pretty easy to get, but you do have that hefty 4.228 origination fee in there. The next is the private student loan. This is where the student is the borrower. The parent usually has to be the cosigner, or somebody may have to cosign. But this is where the student is the primary responsible repayer once the loan goes into repayment. And then there's the private parent loan, which is similar to the federal direct parent loan, where a parent or other responsible person or other person who's interested in borrowing for the student would borrow on behalf of the student, and then they are the ones responsible for repaying. So that's just a refresher on all three of those types of loans. I said I would show you the impact of the origination fee. So as you're considering, please don't forget to consider the impact of a fee on disbursement. So this shows an example of a $10,000 plus loan versus a $10,000 private loan. In both cases, you borrow $10,000, you're going to repay $10,000 plus interest. But with the plus loan, they're going to have that 4.228% origination fee. They will take that out, which will leave you a net disbursement of $9,577. With the private loan, the amount that's dispersed is exactly what you borrowed. So that is something to take into consideration with the federal loans. To wrap this up, before we jump into Q&A, I've just got a couple of tips and resources. So a few reminders. Make sure you fill the FAFSA out and carefully review the student aid report to make sure there's no errors. Make sure you don't forget to accept or decline your offer. Return it to the school's financial aid office or click on it if it's a portal. You don't have to accept all types of aid. So you can take a look at the aid, and if you don't like some of it or don't want some of it, you don't have to accept it. But just remember that if you don't accept loans, if you don't accept work, you also can't expect the school to turn around and replace that with grant money. They've already given you the grant money that you can get. And so they're not going to, if you don't want work, you can't say, well, I want work, I want grant instead of work. That's probably not going to happen. It might happen if you have special circumstances and you let them know about it and they recalculate your need. But just remember, they've typically done the best they can in terms of giving you the most free money first. Each award letter or offer letter covers one academic year. You're going to have to do this every year. You'll fill the FAFSA out every year. You'll get a new offer letter every year. If you have renewal programs that need renewals, grants and scholarships, make sure you understand those. Compare the terms and conditions of each type of aid and your loans, and compare your offer letters closely and make sure that you understand what's being offered and what you're going to have to cover out of your pocket. Many options are out there to pay for college. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. So we just simply recommend the 1, 2, 3 approach. Number one, start with money you don't have to pay back. Savings or investments, income, grants, scholarships. Anything you don't have to pay back is what you ought to start with. Number two, explore federal student loan options. This is the federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And lastly, research options for covering the balance and choose one that works for your family. This can be in the form of a payment plan, a Parent Plus loan, a private loan. You can also make options to make the best fit for your family's financial situation. So since we all like free money, here's a link again to that Provident Credit Union scholarship search tool powered by Sallie Mae. You can also find information about this, about private education loans on this link. So Provident Credit Union has some information about private loans as well. I have some time to answer questions. And so while Carol looks through everything that's comes in, to give you a minute to think about your questions, I'm going to put this little legal page up that has to be here for 60 seconds. And then I'll move to questions. And I'm willing to stay beyond 7 o'clock to answer any outstanding questions if anyone has any. I don't know what Carol's time frame is, but we've got a few minutes for some questions. So Carol, you want to throw some questions at me and let's see what we still have to answer.
Sure. How is the expected family contribution calculated?
It is a very complicated formula. I used to have to, when I first, because I've been in financial aid forever, I used to actually have to do these by hand, and there were these worksheets. So it's a very complicated formula. It takes into consideration everything from your income to your age to your asset to your family size. So many different factors go into that formula. There's tables, you know, that they'll take your family size and there's a table, and there's income and they take a table, and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty complicated formula, but it's designed to treat everybody sort of equally in the end so that they can distribute need-based aid in the most fair way as possible. All right,
next question. My wife was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and circumstances have changed. How do colleges look at such situations, and what do they expect to see from us to prove medical situation?
Okay, that question probably came in when I was talking about EFC earlier, and I think I've mentioned a couple of times now that all you have to do is fill out the FAFSA the way it asks you to, and then contact the school financial aid office and say, okay, we have changed circumstances. This is our circumstance. What do you need from us for documentation to consider a different financial aid eligibility? And they will let you know what they need. So.
I expect EFC to be 0, but I want to make sure that my kids are responsible. So I want to take the loan. So I want to take the loan. What do you think about it?
Who borrows and how much you borrow is really a very personal situation for your family. So I think I gave you a lot of loan situations you can look at. Even if you don't qualify for financial aid, students can borrow the unsubsidized loan and have some skin in the game. Students can also borrow a private loan with you as the co-signer and have some skin in the game. Or there is the Parent Plus loan and the private parent loan, both of which are available to families with zero financial aid eligibility. So you've got all kinds of options there with the loans. Hopefully that question was answered earlier, and hopefully you understand the different. There's so many different options for need-based and non-need-based loans. So I gave you all of those. So hopefully I got that answered for you.
About FAFSA, is there a calculator to put in numbers and understand my future situation? My kids are 12 years away from college to understand 529 contributions.
Read that question again.
Okay. Is there a calculator to put in numbers and understand my future situation? My kids are 12 years away from college to understand 529 contributions.
Okay, yes, there are definitely calculators out there where you can calculate your expected family contribution. I believe there's even one on studentaid.gov. And Sally Mae, I think, has one. So there are different websites where you can go to, in fact, I would just Google expected family contribution estimator. And that might give you a starting point, even 12 years out, to kind of see where you land today. And it may change by that time. In fact, they're doing all kinds of stuff right now to change how financial aid is going to be calculated and awarded. But it's a great place to start. And if you're thinking about it 12 years ahead of your kids going to school, fantastic. And do that 529 plan. Work with your tax planner and your financial advisor, and whatever you can save is money you don't have to borrow down the road. So good for you for starting so early.
Are most federal student loans interest deferred while in school?
The interest is just so. I talked about the two federal student loans. You have the unsubsidized loan and the subsidized loan. The subsidized loan doesn't have any interest while you're in school. The government's paying it on your behalf, and so, but you have to have financial need. The unsubsidized loan is accruing interest, and it will capitalize once you go into repayment. So I think I kind of went through that as well. I think that might have been an earlier question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another question. Do you need to update your FAFSA application annually? I think that is.
Yes, you do. Every year you need to fill the FAFSA out. If you want money each year, you've got to fill the FAFSA out each year. Because every year is a different year. So schools just award 1 year at a time.
Is work study money earned taxed? Is work study money earned taxed?
It can be. It depends. I think it really depends on if you earn enough for it to be taxable. So if you earn a small amount and you don't have a lot of earnings, then it's not taxable. But otherwise, it is taxable just like any other income.
How does one apply for? I think we answered that one.
Okay.
For the Parent Plus loan, does interest accrue while in school? When does repayment start?
So for Parent Plus loans, I'm going to put my video back on so you guys can see my face. For the Parent Plus loan, interest does begin immediately. And if you choose to defer it, that interest is going to accrue and it will be added to the loan once you go into repayment. If you choose to make payments immediately, you will be paying principal and interest. So yeah, interest starts right away. And if you defer it, it'll just accrue. And if you don't defer it, you'll be paying it along with your payments. So hopefully that makes sense.
We have a question about getting a copy of the PowerPoint and how to answer, how to ask questions if they have questions after this presentation.
So we are not providing a copy of the PowerPoint, but we will be providing as Carol said at the beginning, this is recorded. And so you'll be able to look at it again, and you can stop on any slides that you want, take pictures of them or whatever you want. And it'll be on the Provident Credit Union website.
Sounds good. I think that's all the questions that I've received so far.
Okay, and I did see a question. I actually was able to pull up the question. Yes, I am available to do presentations for schools. So someone asked me that.
Yes.
If Carol, you want to send that person my email address as a follow-up, that particular participant, that would be great.
Yep, I was going to, yeah, I'll connect you guys too.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's it.
Okay. All right, well, it is a little bit after 7, so hopefully I answered all of your questions. And I'm glad I was able to be here and provide this information to you. This is a passion for me to make sure people really understand how to pay for college, how to really think about the cost, how to think about your loan. So I hope you got some good information out of tonight's session and that it's helpful for you as you go forward in your college planning journey. And thanks again for coming this evening. Carol, thanks so much for hosting me tonight on this session. And I hope you guys all have a really wonderful evening and rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.